The Democrats are trying to steal the Senate race and the governor's race in Florida. They're trying to steal the governor's race in Georgia, and they're trying to steal the Senate race in Arizona. And, of course, they do so saying every vote must count. The same people who will not allow the cleaning of voting records to ensure that only people who are supposed to vote, vote and vote once. And Republicans should be prepared for this sort of stuff. They should be prepared for this sort of stuff. This is the problem. I remember when Motor Voter first came up many years ago. Kennedy pushed it. Chris Dodd was pushing it. The Democrats, the liberals pushed it, and they got it passed. And there were many warnings about possible fraud. Democrats had no problem with that, and that's what you're seeing. There shouldn't be early voting. If you have to vote early, you ought to have a reason. That's the way it used to be. 2 weeks before an election, I'm going to be out of town or whatever it is, and you have to do so under penalty of perjury. And you submit the form, and they approve it or they don't. All this voting by mail and voting on the Internet and early voting just so you can have early voting, it lends itself exactly to this kind of activity. And I've never seen Republicans pick up a ton of votes after an election. Have you ever seen that, Mr. Producer? They always find ballots that help the Democrats. Have you noticed that, ladies and gentlemen? They always find ballots that help the Democrats. So rather than Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, more and more and more votes coming out of Republican counties, no. Their opponents have more and more votes coming out of Broward County and Miami-Dade and Palm Beach. The same three counties that they always use to try and turn elections. The same three counties. Look at Georgia. Oh, we just found 8,000 ballots in Atlanta. Well, what do you know? Look at Arizona. Oh, we have with thousands and thousands of ballots here we've got to count. It's incredible. And when the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, they didn't do anything about it. Nothing. Here's a piece from Fox. Florida Republican Marco Rubio charged that 2 Democrat-controlled counties in the state, in possible violation of election law, have been reporting a slow drip of tens of thousands of additional ballots favorable to several Democratic candidates for statewide office, including incumbent Senator Bill Nelson. And we should add Andrew Gillum. Liberal lawyers, he said, are descending on the state in a calculated attempt to change the results and try and steal races for Senate and Agriculture Commissioner. Florida law requires counties report early voting and vote by mail within 30 minutes after polls close, Rubio wrote on Twitter. 43 hours after polls closed, 2 Democrat strongholds, Broward County and Palm Beach County, are still counting and refusing to disclose how many ballots they have left to count. Florida statutes mandate that the canvassing board shall report all early voting and all tabulated vote-by-mail results to the Department of State within 30 minutes after the polls close, and that thereafter the canvassing board shall report, with the exception of provisional ballot results, updated precinct election results to the department at least every 45 minutes until all results are completely reported. The state code continues. The supervisor of elections shall... Hold on a second. Mr. President, please don't appoint Chris Christie your attorney general. Please don't do that. The guy's ego is massive. He's going to turn on you. I hope that people around the president understand this and are advising the president. And Chris Christie's way out of his league to be Attorney General of the United States. Well, he was a U.S. attorney. No, I don't care what he was. He'd be a disaster as Attorney General. Count me as a no vote. I said no. Can you imagine this guy as a disagreement with the president? Probably leak like hell. Boy, oh boy. Let me go on. Florida. The state code continues. The supervisor of elections shall notify the department immediately of any circumstances that do not permit periodic updates as required. Vote totals in several major races in the state are changing rapidly, and all for the Democrats. Imagine. GOP Senate candidate Rick Scott, also Florida's governor, was ahead of Nelson by roughly 1/4 of 1% point as of Thursday morning, according to the Tampa Bay Times. The paper also said agriculture commissioner candidates were separated by only 0.06 points. That race flipped. Now the Democrat is leading for state agriculture commissioner, which is a big statewide constitutional office in Florida. So just like that, the Democrats are winning the statewide agriculture slot. Broward County, hardcore left-wing Democrat, recorded that significantly more votes were received in the agriculture commissioner contest than the much higher-profile Senate election. Wow! An attorney for Nelson's campaign suggested a computer error might explain that anomaly. In the closely watched gubernatorial race, Ron DeSantis held a narrow 0.52% point edge over Democrat Andrew Gillum as of Thursday morning. Guess what? By this afternoon, unofficial figures had DeSantis up by just 38,515 votes, a lead of just 0.47%, low enough to trigger a mandatory recount, just dropping under the 0.50. How do you like that? Without providing legally sufficient justification, Rubio said, Democratic-controlled Broward and Palm Beach counties on Wednesday afternoon continued to report new ballots. His point is, the counting is supposed to stop. They're trying to avoid what happened in 2000. The date and the time was passed. It's over. No, but look, we have more ballots. How many do you have? We don't really know. We just keep finding them. And not only that, what ballots are they counting? What ballots are they discarding? In Broward County, they're doing this in secret, even though a judge ordered it to be open. And they're concerned that certain ballots are being counted and certain ballots aren't. Provisional ballots cast by voters without proper ID or at the wrong location are factoring into the late results. And Florida officials have rejected campaigns' requests for the identity of those voters, citing federal and state law. Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections Susan Butcher, amen to that, told Fox News that Palm Beach is still counting about 2,000 mail-in ballots where voters circled or highlighted by drawing an arrow pointing at the candidate's name, their choice, instead of filling in the appropriate bubbles. Look, if you can't color in one of those circles and you're doing arrows or stick figures or squares or whatever, that shouldn't count. It's like going on an airplane where the flight attendant says, this is how you put your seatbelt on. And I think to myself, if you don't know how to buckle a damn seatbelt, get the hell off the plane. Because that tells me when you go into the bathroom, you're going to miss. So get off the plane. Under Florida law, the state elections department is allowed to determine voter intent. Oh. Butcher told Fox News that elections department staff is going through each of the 2,000 mail-in ballots, and where voter intent is determined, a worker is filling in a new ballot on behalf of the voter. Why does this happen in this state all the time? Where voter intent cannot be determined, the ballot is sent to the canvassing board to undergo a review. Election officials are also reviewing 1,500 military and overseas ballots, which are still being counted. Florida law allows military service members to mail or fax ballots in. A provisional vote report is due in Tallahassee by Saturday noon. You see, we not only have to win elections, we have to win them with enough of a buffer that all the cheating that goes on doesn't affect the outcome. Because you have, in every precinct, different rules. Certain people demand a vote. Some have to show IDs, some don't. They're given provisional ballots. In many cases, they come in with worker IDs, I'm told, in some places in Virginia, as opposed to actual legitimate identification. Oh, it's a provisional ballot. Who cares? And so all these things are built into the voting process so the left can steal it. Tell me, where has a Republican stolen an election? Where's a Republican stolen an election? Nowhere. And How is it when Democrats are behind, they always manage to pick up votes after the fact? Broward County election officials did not immediately return Fox News' request for comment. Rubio tweeted, now Democrat lawyers, of course, are descending on Florida. They are very clear they aren't there to make sure every vote is counted. Under Florida law, if the margin in any rate... Is this boring you? Is the country boring you? Is the Senate and the House boring you? I hope not. Under Florida law, if the margin in any race hits 0.25% or lower, a manual recount of any ballot set aside from the machine recount will be ordered, reminiscent of the scene in the 2000 presidential election. You need hard and fast rules. If it's not counted by such and so date, then it's not counted. If you can't color in the circle, then you're too stupid to vote. Sorry. Rubio made clear he has no confidence in the integrity of South Florida's election officials, suggesting a possible Republican-led court challenge might be looming. Ooh, you can't have that now, can you, ladies and gentlemen? A U.S. Senate seat and a statewide cabinet officer, and he should have pointed out also a governorship, are now potentially in the hands of an election supervisor with a history of incompetence and of blatant violations of state and federal law, he wrote, linking to a Miami Herald article describing several scandals that have gripped Broward County's elections department. Earlier this year, listen to this, a judge found that Broward election supervisor Brenda Snipes had illegally destroyed ballots in a 2016 congressional contest, leading the governor's office to assign election monitors to supervisor. Wow. Every vote should count as long as they're Democrats. Every vote should count as long as there's Democrats. And as long as the Democrats win. This is Florida right now. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
See what we have here. Now, in Arizona, it's very complicated in Arizona. They're finding so many ballots in Arizona and in mostly Democratic areas. Now, how can that be? Do they think they're Florida? Apparently so. Now, I'm a little confused, ladies and gentlemen. We have a Republican governor of Florida. His name is still Rick Scott. We have a Republican governor of Arizona, this fellow Ducey. What's going on in Georgia? I believe they have a Republican governor, too. In fact, as I understand it, the Secretary of State is the Republican gubernatorial candidate who won. I don't understand it. What's it going to take to make sure that in close elections the Democrats don't steal them? It's how Hal Franken wound up in the Senate, remember? But in that case, they had a Democrat Secretary of State, and they kept counting and counting and counting until Norm Coleman lost, and Hal Franken won. Remember that one? Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Remember in the 2000 election in Florida, they kept counting and counting and counting until it got lower and lower and lower, and finally the United States Supreme Court stepped in and said, all right, that's enough, boys and girls. Because the Supreme Court of Florida, loaded with left-wing Democrats, much like the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, kept changing the rules. And even one of the Democrat Supreme Court justices in Florida, I think it was actually the Chief Justice, had enough integrity to say, hey, we can't keep doing this, you know. Sure we can, the others said. And they kept changing it and changing it and changing it. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court 3 months ago, they said, you know what? This redistricting stuff is unconstitutional. So instead what we're going to do is institute essentially the Democrat plan. That cost the people of Pennsylvania 4 or 5 seats on Tuesday night. It's amazing how we ever win anything. It's amazing how we ever win anything. And also, when networks, at least one network, but other networks, are calling the House of Representatives at 9:30 at night on the East Coast, which is 6:30 in the evening in California, and you have close races like Rohrabacher and Steve Knight. You had 4 or 5 very close races. Some of them were determined by a couple thousand votes, some of them by less. I thought we were done doing that after 1980 and what happened to Carter. Apparently not. And then holding races where you have 100% of the vote in and not calling them. It's weird. It's our special analysis system. So now we have corruption going on. It seems to me on election night, when you have a gubernatorial candidate who's won by 85,000 votes, and all of a sudden it's, whoa, look at that. We're down to 33,000 votes. Somebody should know something's up. The Democrats are good at this. They've been good at this for a very, very long time. During Reconstruction, in order to prevent blacks from coming into the Congress, the the local officials, and those that still pretty much controlled the states, they were good at doing this. They were very, very good at doing this throughout our history, quite frankly. Preventing people from voting, counting additional votes. And now it's in your face, stuffing ballots. How can somebody who was an election official in Broward County with a record of destroying Republican ballots, how is it that they're still in office and not removed by a judge? How is it that they're still in office and not removed by a judge? The rules don't say you keep counting and counting and counting till Democrats win. Is that the rule? Now, the Democrats are trying, and you can be sure Schumer's taking an eye on this and probably getting behind it now. They're trying to steal the election. That's what they're up to right now. I'll be right back.